Okay, this is the last part for our discussion for module 1, and Mohammed will continue from tomorrow up. Shall I start? Are you hearing me? Can you hear me? Okay. Somewhat it is vast, it's lipids, but I will give you some highlights and then you can read it and you will get it from module 3. In module 3, also you will get this one in detail, but for us, for this part, we will see some of the overview of lipids and what makes lipids are unique from other biomolecules. Lipids are unique than other biomolecules. Unlike carbohydrates, unlike proteins, unlike nucleic acids, lipids are not strictly biopolymers. A single molecule can act as a lipid. For example, cholesterol. It's not as such a polymer of repeating unit of building blocks. Rather, a single molecule can act as a lipid. Now, lipids are their organic biomolecules, which occurs in plants and animals. And lipids are they are heterogeneous in nature, in terms of structure as well as in terms of functions, but they belong to in one group because they are insoluble in water, and which is soluble in non-polar solvents. And lipids, for us, can act as secondary source of energy. And lipids can have great role since it diverges in terms of structure as well as functions. It has its own role in structural component of our plasma membrane. It's also important in signal transductions and nerve impulse transductions. Lipids are they are heterogeneous in nature. You can see here also their structural difference. But why they belong to in one group? They are insoluble in water. Actually, for example, if you look at the fatty acids, they are amphipathic in nature. It has long hydrocarbon chains in the Swiss carboxylic part. The carboxylic part is polar, whereas the hydrocarbon chain becomes non-polar. Such molecules are called amphipathic in nature. It has both polar as well as non-polar. That makes glycolipids are suitable for the formation of plasma membrane. But since they are heterogeneous in nature, they are not homogeneous. It differs in terms of structures, but they belong to in one group. They are insoluble in water. But here, for example, if the fatty acid carbon chain becomes very small, like if a fatty acid has 4 carbon at hydrocarbon chain, this fatty acid can be soluble in water due to the presence of carboxylic group. But as the length of hydrocarbon chain in fatty acid is increasing, the molecule becomes insoluble in water. Therefore, in general, lipids are insoluble in water. That doesn't mean that all lipids are insoluble in water. Some of them can be soluble in water. Okay. Lipids are soluble in fat solvents. They are relatively insoluble in water. Okay, it's relatively insoluble in water, and lipids can be soluble in fat solvents. And lipids are relatively smaller in size and less in dense. That helps for us to swim easily in water since it has fat contents. And if you mix lipids with that water, fats the water since it has less indents. This is a complex lipid structures, but they are not strictly biopolymers, as I mentioned earlier. Unlike complex carbohydrates, proteins, lipids structures contains no repeatedly linked monomeric groups. When it is structured glycogen, which is formed from repeating unit of glucose, when we see here insulin, it is made from what? Repeating unit of amino acids. But lipids are not as such formed. Lipids are their organic, heterogeneous, and hydrophobic molecules, relatively insoluble. But most of them, they have what? Fatty acids plus an alcohol, which is formed by ester linkage, and it is utilized as our body for production of energy as well during starvation. This is a definition of blood. What are the sources of lipids? We do have two sources of lipids. We can get from the food what we eat, that is exogenous source. Our body also synthesizes it, mainly the liver. Our body can synthesize it mainly in the liver. Again, in the intestine also, lipids can be synthesized. For example, LDL, okay, can be synthesized within the liver. Fatty acids, cholesterol as well. Cholesterol can be synthesized in the liver. Okay, this is one source of endogenous source of getting lipids. Now we have two sources, exogenous and endogenous. And since lipids are heterogeneous in nature and lipids are non-polar, it needs a transporter molecule to transport them in blood plasma. Since our blood plasma is rich in water, as you know, water is polar, and lipids are non-polar, these non-polar molecules will face a difficulty to move on polar environment like blood plasma. Then we need to have what? We need to have carrier molecules. These carrier molecules are nothing but lipoproteins. Lipoproteins are nothing but they are made from proteins are part of the lipid, whereas the inner part is rich in non-polar lipids. And these non-polar lipids can be transported by contacting the polar environment of the protein of lipoproteins, and it can easily move to the blood plasma. These lipoproteins are like chylomicrons here. Chylomicrons. Chylomicrons, its main role is to transport exogenous triacylglycerol. Exogenous triacylglycerol. Whereas VLDL is another form of lipoproteins which is useful to transport endogenous triacylglycerol. Both of them transport what? Triacylglycerol, but their source is different. Chylomicrons, exogenous triacylglycerol, VLDL, endogenous triacylglycerols. Here is the distribution of lipids in our body. Can be distributed or found in biomembranes or plasma membranes. Can be found in adipose tissue. Can be found in nervous tissue, subcutaneous layer of our skins. Even it can patch what? Our soft organs, and it protects them from injury. These are the structures, role of lipids. Mainly plasma membrane is rich in what? Phospholipid bilayer. We do have phospholipids, and even plasma membrane also has what? Cholesterol. And the other, it has also what? Sphingolipids. These are some of the function of lipids. It gives energy. Carbohydrates, proteins can give what? 4 kilocalories per gram. 1 gram of carbohydrates can give us 4 kilocalories. 1 gram of proteins can give 4 kilocalories. But you know, our body will not use proteins as energy source. Rather, it has its own functions. 1 gram of carbohydrates can give 4 kilocalories, whereas in the case of lipids can give a high amount of energy. We can get 9 kilocalories per gram. And it protects vital organs against shock, as I mentioned earlier. It insulates body against temperature extremes. And it can carry what? Fat-soluble vitamins. We do have a different form of vitamins in our body. Okay, as you know, vitamins are in general, it's not synthesized in our body, but our body also can produce vitamins like niacin from tryptophan, but the amount is almost negligible. And vitamins can be classified into two groups. water-soluble vitamins and fat-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins are like vitamin A, D, E, A, K. These are fat-soluble vitamins. And these fat-soluble vitamins, they are fat in nature, then it will not move alone. It needs what? Carrier molecules or lipids. So then we can, and some lipids can act as a flavoring agent. And it's an important component of plasma membrane. It helps the body use carbohydrates and proteins efficiently. Okay. These are some of the forms of lipids. For example, triacylglycerol. Triacyl, from the name indicates, 3 fatty acids, which binds with what? With glycerol. Now the alcohol is glycerol, and we have a fatty acid, which is binds by ester linkage. And triacylglycerol is, which is stored. This is a storage form of lipids in our body. Our body stores lipids in the form of triacylglycerol, or it can be abbreviated as TAG. This is the lipid which is stored in our body, mainly in adipose tissue. It is a reservoir for energy for long-term use. The other is fatty acid. This is the simplest lipid. But fatty acids, again, can be stored in the form of what? Triacylglycerol in adipose tissue in order to generate large amount of ATP. And fatty acids, as you know, it's a component of what? Phospholipids. It can be found in plasma membrane. The other is phospholipids. This also belongs to compound lipids, which is useful as part of plasma membrane. It can act as pulmonary lung surfactants, mainly lecithin. Okay, lecithin is one form of phospholipid, which is important for pulmonary surfactants. And the amount of lecithin is increasing during pregnancy after 35 weeks. Now, after 35 weeks of pregnancy, the amount of lecithin will be increasing. Therefore, whether the fetus lung is matured or not, it's better to quantify what? The amount of lecithin to that of spring ovarian in order to assess the maturity of the fetus lung. It is very less than expected. The infant, during delivery, the infant may develop what? Respiratory distress syndrome. That is due to the component of pulmonary surfactant composition of lecithin will be what? Less. Therefore, the main role of lecithin is what? In order to prevent lung collapsing. The other form of lipids is glycolipids. From the name indicates, there is carbohydrate moiety and there is a lipid. And this is a part of plasma membrane. Also, it's found in neurons as myelin sheaths. The other is cholesterol. Do you think cholesterol is good for our hearts? Yeah, cholesterol is very important for us. It can be found in, or it can be part of plasma membrane. And cholesterol is useful because from cholesterol, our body can make bile acid or bile salts within the liver and then stored in gallbladder when we need it during lipid digestion. Bile salt is crucial for emulsification. This bile salt is nothing but which is formed from what? Cholesterol. Even vitamin D also derived from cholesterol. Even different sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, all of them is synthesized from cholesterol. And there is no good and bad cholesterol. Okay, if it is cholesterol, that's cholesterol. It's not such bad or good. No way classifying cholesterol as good or bad. But we can say cholesterol. When you see different reference books, you can get good cholesterol or bad cholesterol. That indicates the transporter molecule. Okay, since cholesterol, especially cholesterol ester form, which is abundant in the blood. Esterified means cholesterol at carbon. Cholesterol is actually 27 sterol, 20 carbon sterols, And at position 3, there's the OH. At position 3 carbon, there's OH. If this OH can form ester linkage with fatty acid, that cholesterol is called cholesterol ester. But cholesterol, which has OH at carbon 3, is named as free cholesterol. Now, cholesterol esters, since it is what? Their polarity, okay? The OH makes cholesterol polar, but if it's esterified, it becomes non-polar. Now it needs what? Carrier molecules to transport from the liver to the peripheral tissue or from peripheral tissue to the liver. Now we do have two lipoproteins, which is essential to transport cholesterol from the liver to peripheral tissue or to the opposite one through the help of lipoproteins. And these lipoproteins are nothing but HDL and LDL. Now HDL is named as good cholesterol because it reduces cholesterol in the blood by taking it to the liver, whereas LDL is named as bad cholesterol. It transports cholesterol from the liver to peripheral tissue. Here, bad and good cholesterol is to indicate what? The transporter molecules in which cholesterol can be transported, not the cholesterol itself. And lipids are superior than carbohydrates in terms of energy storage. Lipids have high calorific values and high storage content, and it can store high amount of energy in unlimited ways. And for long-term runners, they use lipids as energy source. When you see lipid components, it has fatty acids mainly, and it has an alcohol. The alcohol may be glycerol or sterols or Sphingosis, and so on. Fatty acids can be classified into two based on the presence or absence of double bonds. And this is some of the classification of lipids, okay? One way of classifying lipids. We do have many criteria to classify lipids into different groups. Among this, one mechanism of classifying lipids is that lipids, if it has a fatty acid which binds to an alcohol through ester linkage, it's named as simple lipids. Now, based on their alcohol, what they have, it can be triacylglycerol or it can be waxes. Triacylglycerol is nothing but it is a chemical name for fats and oils. Oils and fats, chemically, both of them named as triacylglycerol. Both of them have glycerol and alcohol and 3 fatty acids. Waxes, the same as triacylglycerol. It belongs to simple lipids, but their alcohol is not as such glycerol. And it also has what? A long chain, very long chain of fatty acids. And the best example for waxes are like retinyl ester, okay? Those fatty acids in which esterified form can be belongs to what? Waxes. Cholesterol ester form, okay? Ester formed cholesterol also belongs to what? Waxes. Now the other classification of lipids is that compound or complex lipids. Just like that of simple lipids, it has an alcohol, it has fatty acids, but it has also additional groups. And the other is derived lipids. Derived lipids are this type of lipids in which whenever simple lipids and compound lipids are hydrolyzed, it will form derived lipids. For example, when triacylglycerol is hydrolyzed, it will form what? An alcohol and a fatty acid. This fatty acid belongs to derived lipids. Lipids can be classified into two. These are triacylglycerol and waxes. In waxes, the alcohol is other than glycerol. Whereas the chemical name of fats and oils are triacylglycerol. Fats doesn't mean fatty acid only. To mean what? Triacylglycerol. Oils also the same. Its chemical name is triacylglycerol. But what makes fats and oils are differ? Fats has what? Fats are rich in saturated fatty acids and its source is animal, whereas we can get oils from plant sources and oils are rich in unsaturated fatty acids. This is the best example of waxes, mainly cholesterol ester. Okay, cholesterol ester is an example of simple lipids which belongs to waxes. The alcohol is cholesterol and the fatty acid is binds at carbon number 3. And the other example of wax is retinol esters. Example of derived lipids, as I mentioned earlier, how derived lipids are formed whenever group 1 and group 2 lipids undergoes hydrolysis, and this form of lipids belongs to derived lipids. Example, fatty acids. When triacylglycerols are hydrolyzed, it will form fatty acid, this fatty acids. Plus the alcohol, it may be monoacylglycerol, it may be diacylglycerol, all of them belongs to what? Derived lipids. As I mentioned earlier, cholesterol ester belongs to what? Simple lipids. When cholesterol esters undergo hydrolysis, it will form fatty acids plus cholesterol. The cholesterol, the free cholesterol, is an example of derived lipids. Other examples of derived lipids are lipid-like compounds, like ecosanites, steroidal hormones, fat-soluble vitamins, and so on. And according to Bloor's classification of lipids, he classified lipids into 4 groups. These are simple, complex, derived, and miscellaneous lipids. Miscellaneous lipids like substances which have lipid-like characters, like vitamin, fat-soluble vitamins. Depending on polarity, lipids can be classified into 2. Neutral lipids, these are non-polar lipids, which lacks polar group or charge group. There is no polar groups and charge groups belongs to neutral lipids like triacylglycerol, cholesterol, esters. Amphipathic lipids, as I mentioned earlier, if a molecule has both polar and non-polar parts, which is found in one molecule, the molecule is named as amphipathic in nature. Here lipids are amphipathic since it has both polar and non-polar. And phospholipids are the major component of plasma membrane. Why they fit it? Due to the presence of both polar and non-polar molecules that makes them suitable to be part of plasma membrane. And this is a classification of lipids based on its functions. Storage form of lipids like triacylglycerol, membrane lipids like phospholipids, glycolipids, and so on. Type of lipids based on the alcohol what they have. For example, glycerol-based lipids, non-glycerol-based lipids. Now let's see first fatty acids. What are fatty acids? Fatty acids are nothing but long-chain hydrocarbon, which ends with carboxylic acid. Now here, what's expected from you is that what type of fatty acids are common in our body? Even number of fatty acids are common in our body. This is due to the synthesis of fatty acids. Fatty acids are synthesized by adding 2 carbons or by linking the molecule by 2. This 2 carbon is added in the form of acetyl-CoA. Now, during fatty acid synthesis, 2 carbon is added. Okay, for every step, 2 carbon is added. Now, this makes the molecule even number of carbon atoms of fatty acids are the most dominant one. Among this, the most common one is halmitic and strict acid. That means a fatty acid which has 16 carbon and 18 carbon. Okay, 16 carbon fatty acid is called palmitic acid. That is the initial fatty acids, the initial product of fatty acid synthesis in our liver. Whereas a fatty acid which has no double bonds and which has 18 carbon is named as steric acid. Now, which fatty acids even number is the most common? Among these, the most common one is fatty acids in which 16 carbon and 18 carbon even number of fatty acids are the most predominant and common fatty acids which are found in our body. These are palmitic acid and steric acids. Both of them, they are saturated fatty acids. There is no double bond. And fatty acids, they are amphipathic in nature since it has both polar and nonpolar part. A fatty acid can be saturated or unsaturated based on presence or absence of double bonds. And if a fatty acid which has double bond, it can be mainly found in cis configuration. Okay, if we do have carbon, double bond carbon, if the position of hydrogen is aligned similarly, it becomes cis. If the position of hydrogen within this double bond is in opposite direction, that is called trans fatty acids. Now, almost, okay, not all, almost all naturally occurring fatty acids, if there is double bond, it is found in cis form, which is good for our health. But if it is found in trans form, that is not good for our health because it increases bad cholesterol. If you get trans fatty acids from processed foods like chips, okay, you may be at risk to develop different diseases since trans fatty acids increase the amount of bad cholesterol in your body. Or trans fatty acids intake, if you intake high amount of trans fatty acids, it increases the concentration of LDL. At the same time, it decreases the concentration of HDL. That means you will be high risk to develop different arteries. Different forms of fatty acids in our body. One is free fatty acids. That's unesterified fatty acids. A fatty acid which has free carboxyl group is named as unesterified fatty acids. The other is esterified fatty acids. A fatty acid which is bonded to and which bonded to an alcohol and which lacks what? Carboxylic group. There is no free carboxylic group since it is attached with an alcohol by ester bond. But in our body, more than 90% of fatty acids in our blood plasma is in esterified form. In esterified form, can exist as cholesterol esters, can exist as phospholipids. This esterified form of fatty acids can be found in the form of triacyl glycerols. And free fatty acids, that means unesterified fatty acids, are less common in our body. Then how fatty acids can be transported in our body? Long chain free fatty acids. Okay, long chain free fatty acids can be transported by blood plasma, in blood plasma through blood protein called albumin. Whereas the rest non-polar lipids can be transported by lipoproteins. This is some of the function of fatty acids. It can use as secondary source of energy. It's part of membrane structures. From fatty acids, ecosanites, okay? Ecosanites can be synthesized. Ecosanites like thromboxane, prostacyclines, leukotrienes, these are belongs to ecosanites. And these ecosanites are nothing but it's synthesized from fatty acids called arachidonic acid. And fatty acids can be useful to transport cholesterol, since when cholesterol is esterified, the OH at carbon number 3 is esterified with a fatty acid. Now this fatty acid is useful for cholesterol metabolism, transport, as well as to store cholesterol. The other is fully unsaturated fatty acids, also useful for our brain as well as for our heart. That's why it's our high amount of or enough amount of omega-3 fatty acids for their development of their brains. And even also these omega-3 fatty acids are also good for our health in order to reduce different heart diseases. Now, how fatty acids can be classified? It can be classified into different modes based on the number of carbon, based on nutritional requirements. In biochemistry, for example, we do have 20 standard amino acids. Among these 20 standard amino acids, some of them is synthesized in our body. These amino acids are called non-essential amino acids. Those amino acids which is not synthesized in our body is called essential amino acids. But all 20 amino acids are needed for our body, for our health. But essentiality and non-essentiality is too many here, whether our body synthesizes it or not. Based on that, a fatty acid can be essential fatty acids if our body will not able to make it. Based on the length of fatty acids, it can be short chain fatty acids, can be long chain fatty acids, or it can be medium chain fatty acids. Short chain fatty acids are mainly found in dairy products. Nomenclature, based on presence or absence of double bonds, it can be saturated or unsaturated. And saturated fatty acids can be ended by anionic, whereas if it is double bonds are present, it can be named as enoic at the end. For example, fatty acids can be abbreviated like this. For example, as I mentioned earlier, the most common fatty acids which occurs in our body is palmitic acid and citric acid. Now, both of them, they are what? Saturated fatty acids, no double bond. 16 indicates, for example, here, the number of carbon. And ... the next one is 0. 0 indicates what? No double bond. This is called palmitic acid and belongs to saturated fatty acid. Whereas palmitolic acid is the same as palmitic acid. It has 16 carbon, but it has what? One double bond. It belongs to unsaturated fatty acids. Where the double bond is found? In between carbon number 9 and 10. Okay, delta 9 indicates the double bond is found in between carbon number 9 and 10. And the other unsaturated fatty acids are oleic acid, arachidonic acid. This arachidonic acid, okay, the last fatty acid here, which is listed in this PPT, is the precursor for Ecosanite synthesis, which is found in the plasma membrane. We do have another mechanism of naming a fatty acid based on omega carbon. If you see the structures of fatty acids, a fatty acid is long hydrocarbon ended with carboxylic end. Now, from the picture itself here, we do have what? An acidic end, and we do have a methyl end. If you start naming from the methyl end, that is named as omega carbon. The next carbon, it becomes omega 1. Okay, the next one, omega 2. The next one, omega 3. Here, for example, the linolenic acid, it is an omega 3 fatty acid. Why? Because the double bond here starts at omega 3. Here, this is omega 1, next omega 2, next omega 3. Now, this fatty acid is omega 3 fatty acids, in which the double bond is found at carbon number 3 if you start naming from the omega carbon. Whereas linolenic acid, okay, linolenic acid, this is an omega 6 fatty acid. If you start a methyl group, the position of the double bond starts at carbon number 6. That's named as omega 6 and omega 3 fatty acids. Actually, alpha linolenic acid, okay, the first one, alpha linolenic acid and linoleic acid, these are always essential fatty acids for our body. Always they are essential fatty acids for our body, because our body will not able to add double bonds above carbon number 9. Our body lacks desaturase enzymes which adds double bonds beyond carbon number 9. That's the criteria in which a fatty acid is essential here. And these two fatty acids are always they are essential fatty acids. But what about arachidonic acid? What about arachidonic acid? Arachidonic acid, if you have enough amount of linoleic acid, okay, the omega-6 fatty acid, if you do have enough amount of linoleic acid from the food what we eat, arachidonic acid can be what? Synthesized. It can be synthesized. But if the food has almost negligible amount of linoleic acid, arachidonic acid will not be synthesized. In that case, arachidonic acid becomes what? Essential fatty acids. Therefore, arachidonic acid is essential or non-essential due to the food content of the amount of linoleic acids. Then we can say arachidonic acid is semi-essential fatty acid. We can say it like that. Arachidonic acid is semi-essential fatty acid. Hello. Editor first finish. Okay. Now, where is the double bond is found? As I mentioned earlier, for example, if you abbreviate as delta 9, the double bond is found in between carbon number 9 and carbon number 10. If we abbreviate as delta 9 and 12, the double bond is found in between carbon number 9 and 10, and in between 12 and 30. And this is a classification, and this is our linoleic acid and alpha linolenic acid is essential amino acids, whereas arachidonic acid it can be synthesized in our body, and we can say arachidonic acid is semi-essential fatty acids. If you have enough amount of linoleic acid what you eat, arachidonic acid can be synthesized. If not, arachidonic acid becomes essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. Based on absence of double bonds, example here, like mystric acid, palmitic acid. Here, what is expected from you is that the most common type of fatty acid is palmitic acid and mystric acid, which is saturated. Whereas a fatty acid, if it has one double bond, it's named as monounsaturated fatty acids. And a fatty acid which has two and more double bonds, it's named as polyunsaturated fatty acids. Both linoleic acid and alpha linolenic acid they are polyunsaturated fatty acids. Arachidonic acid also it is polyunsaturated fatty acids, but it is semi-essential fatty acid. Now I will ask you one question. As you know, fatty acids it is important since it is one of the major components of plasma membrane. Now, which one is more dominant? Is it polyunsaturated fatty acids or saturated fatty acids, which is found in blood plasma, in plasma membrane? Which one is more common? Is it the polyunsaturated fatty acids or saturated fatty acids in the plasma membrane? Which one is more common? Which one is good for our health? Is it saturated or unsaturated? Okay, thank you, Hanan. Thank you, Natman. Okay. Yeah, unsaturated fatty acid is good for our health. Okay. If your intake of saturated, because the source of is totally different. Here, you can get saturated fatty acids from animal source. Saturated fatty acids, we can get it from animal source, whereas unsaturated fatty acids, we can get it from plant source, like oils. Oils are rich in what? Unsaturated fatty acids. The unsaturated fatty acids means it has double bonds. The presence of the double bond bends the fatty acid by 30 degrees. That reduces what? Compactness. That makes oils are liquid at room temperature. Whereas fats, which is animal source, which is formed, you can get it from animals, and animal fats are rich in saturated fatty acids. No double bond at all. Then that makes what? Compact together, and it becomes solid at room temperature. If your intake is very high than the normal, if your intake of fats is high, cholesterol synthesis in your body, in your liver, also aggravated. Therefore, you should limit what? The consumption of saturated fatty acids. And polyunsaturated fatty acids, as I mentioned earlier, the presence of the double bond makes the fatty acid bends by 30 degrees. That reduces compactness. And as you know, plasma membrane it is a fluid mosaic in nature. Therefore, in order to maintain the fluidity of the plasma membrane, unsaturated fatty acids are common. And omega-3 only, omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are crucial for our health and can be useful for the synthesis of thromboxane. If you take enough amount of omega-3 fatty acids, that is good for your health. It reduces the chance of getting CHD or any heart disease. Omega-6 fatty acids also, it's good for our health. Where we get omega-3 fatty acids? Omega-3 fatty acids are mainly found from fish. We can get it from fish oils, fish products, and so on. Omega-6 fatty acids, we can get it mainly from plant sources. Therefore, vegetable oils are rich in what? Omega-6 fatty acids. Why we say essential fatty acids? Because our body lacks what? Desaturase. Desaturase means it's an enzyme which adds double bond. Our body lacks desaturase, which adds double bond above or beyond carbon number 9. That makes a fatty acid is essential or not. All saturated fatty acids are non-essential. All monosaturated fatty acids are non-essential as well. Okay. What is the use of essential fatty acids? It is needed for ecosanite production, and it is also important for part of plasma membrane. It also enhances structural integrity of mitochondrial membranes. It's also useful for our brain development. That's why we give fish oils for infants. Taking enough amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids reduce the risk of atherosclerosis. Okay. If you are LDL, what's LDL? LDL is one form of lipoprotein. Its main function is to transport cholesterol from the liver to the peripheral tissue. Now, the higher LDL means there is high chance to accumulate cholesterol in your blood. That enhances your risk to develop atherosclerosis, and it leads to different diseases like myocardial infarction. But if you get enough amount of omega-3 fatty acids, your risk becomes decreased. This is due to what? Omega-3 fatty acids boosts your body, your HDL content. The amount of HDL becomes increasing if you take enough amount of omega-3 fatty acids. The high intake of omega-3, the lower risk of developing atherosclerosis. This is due to omega-3 fatty acids increase HDL, at the same time decrease LDL. It reduces blood pressure as well, okay? And it enhances our brain health and heart as well. Therefore, you can protect yourselves from different heart attacks by taking enough amount of omega-3 fatty acids. Even omega-3 fatty acids also prevents us getting to develop different if there's deficiency of polyunsaturated fatty acids, individuals may develop toad skin. Okay, his skin is like a toad. This is named as Sphingosis. The skin becomes dry with leakage, and they will have scary dermatitis. There is presence of horny eruption. They will have loss of hair. There is wound healing. This is the characteristic or the deficiency. This is the symptoms of lack of essential fatty acids. And among saturated fatty acids, there is what? The first biosynthesis product of fatty acids in our body is palmitic acid. This palmitic acid is nothing but the 16 carbon saturated fatty acids. During lipogenesis, this is the initial product. But later it can be modified and it can be elongated by an elongase enzyme. If your intake is high of the saturated fatty acids, the risk of developing cardiovascular disease becomes increasing. This is because if your intake is of fats which is rich in saturated fatty acids, cholesterol synthesis in the liver becomes also accelerated. The higher cholesterol, the higher risk of developing cardiovascular disease. The other is isomerization. Okay, isomerization is here. If a fatty acid which has double bonds, the arrangement of hydrogen may be in opposite or it may be on the same line. Now, which one is good for our health? It is cis4. Naturally, those fatty acids which has double bond are mainly found in plants. Therefore, vegetable oils are rich in what? Unsaturated fatty acids. And these are mainly cis type of unsaturated fatty acids are found in plant sources, and which is good for our health. But by any means like hydrogenation, by any means like hydrogenation, or like hardening of oils, like to form margarine, for example, due to hydrogenation. This cis form of oils or cis form of fatty acids can be changed into what? Trans forms. Especially these fast processed foods, which use oils. The cis form can be changed into what? Saturated fatty acids or trans fatty acids. Through hydrogenation, okay? Through hydrogenation, cis fatty acids can be changed into trans fatty acids or can be changed into saturated fatty acids. Therefore, it is not advisable to take processed foods. Hydrogenation is a process replacing some double bonds of polyunsaturated fats with hydrogen atom. Okay, therefore, vegetable oils becomes margarine through hydrogenation. But hydrogenation is not good for our health because it can change cis into trans or cis into what? Saturated fatty acids. And the trans fatty acids, this is the worst form of lipids, which will have great effect in our health. Hence, trans fatty acids decrease HDL. At the same time, it increases what? LDL. Yes. Lipid peroxidation. As you know, lipids can undergo peroxidation if there is high amount of free radicals in our body. These fatty acids can undergo peroxidation or undergoes auto-oxidation, and this enhances deterioration of foods, and also it damages our tissue. And finally, it will cause different diseases like cancer, atherosclerotic, inflammatory disease. That means polyunsaturated fatty acids. Okay, polyunsaturated fatty acids are a high risk to undergo lipid peroxidation. Once lipids are undergoes peroxidation, it initiates the generation of free radicals, and these free radicals are those elements or atoms which has an additional electrons on the outer orbit are not as such stable. They are highly reactive. This affects what? Our tissues, and it will cause different diseases. Free radicals also can affect our DNA. It can affect lipids. Therefore, polyunsaturated fatty acids will undergo peroxidation by themselves, and it will enhance what? Production of large amount of free radicals. How we will prevent it? By taking enough amount of antioxidants. Antioxidants can sacrifice themselves to destroy free radicals. And all these fatty acids are good for our health, okay? But by any means, through hydrogenation, if these form of fatty acids are changed into transform, that's not good for our health. But why we get trans fatty acids in different food shelves? ለምሳሌ you know donut, yeah? On the outer part, donut ላይ የሆነ የሚቀባ ነገር አለ. That is rich in trans fatty acids, for example. Okay? And naturally, always plant oils are liquid at room temperature. Always plant oils naturally are liquid at room temperature, whereas animal fats they are solid at room temperature. But when we see oils which is found in our country, if you go to different shops, you can get semi-solid form of what? oils. That's not good for our health. These oils are formed by hydrogenation. And hydrogenation changes what? Hydrogenation changes unsaturated fatty acids, which is found in cis form, can change into what? Saturated as well as trans fatty acids. That is not good for our health. And if your intake is high, trans fatty acids are changed into what? Your risk will be high to develop atherosclerosis, and finally you will develop what? Myocardial infarction. Do you have questions? Do you have questions? If you don't have, we can get unsaturated fatty acids from plants. Plants are rich in unsaturated fatty acids. That doesn't mean that plant oils also has saturated fatty acids, but the amount or the proportion is what? Less. Plants has saturated fatty acids, but their amount is less. Omega-3 fatty acids are found in plants. Yeah. Now, this is a good question. Why they will undergoes hydrogenation? Because hydrogenation enhances the shelf life of the food. Okay. Hydrogenation, as I mentioned earlier, polyunsaturated fatty acids are at risk to undergo peroxidation, lipid peroxidation, to develop free radicals. They are not as such stable. But hydrogenation makes them stable and gives the shelf life of the food becomes what? High. ስለዚህ ድርናቶች ላይ ከላይ የሚቀባው ለዛ ነው ማለት ነው። Hydrogenation enhances the shelf life of the food. When you see the composition of alcohols, which is found in lipids, it can be glycerol, or it can be sphingosine, or it can be cholesterol. Now, what type of alcohols are found in lipids? It may be glycerol, maybe sphingosine, it may be cholesterol. But now I will ask you one question. Do you think cholesterol is found in oils? Do you think cholesterol is found in plants, oils? Do you think cholesterol is found in plant oils? Yes? Yeah, cholesterol is exclusively found in what? In animals, okay? Therefore, always oils, okay? Always oils are cholesterol. Always oils are free from cholesterol, since it is found only in animal products, since it is found in animals. Now, when you see glycerol, for example, it is carbon number 3, and it is polyol, which is rich in OH, and glycerol is the backbone of triacylglycerol and glycerophospholipids. And where we can get glycerol from endogenously or exogenously. From glycerol, we can make what? glucose through gluconeogenesis. It is formation of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. We can get glycerol from glucose as well. And glucose is responsible by glucose transforms to glyceraldehyde, and glyceraldehyde reduction can form glycerol. Glycerol formed is then used for biosynthesis of glycerol-based lipids. Therefore, we can get glycerol from glucose or exogenously. The other alcohol is sphingosine. This is structures of sphingosine, which is a base for sphingolipids. Sphingosine it is a derived lipids we can get from hydrolysis of sphingolipids. An example of sphingolipids are like sphingophospholipid, sphingoglycolipids. What is a ceramide? A fatty acid linked with amino group of sphingosine with amide linkage can form what? Ceramide. Then we do have an alcohol called sphingosine. This reacts with fatty acids through amide linkage. It will form ceramide. Okay, the difference between glycogenesis, synthesizing of glycogen. Glycogenesis means it is synthesis of glycogen, whereas gluconeogenesis is synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. Glycogenesis is synthesizing glycogen from glucose. Now, ceramide linked to carbohydrate moiety can form what? Sphingolipids. This is a structure of sphingosine-based lipids. Since the alcohol is what? The alcohol is sphingosine. From this, other form of sphingolipids can be formed. The other group here is sterols. Lipid containing multiple ring carb. This is the general structures of the sterols, and which is essential for plasma membrane. But sterols like cholesterol is not as such essential for our body. Essentiality means nutritionally, since our body can make it. They are manufactured in our bodies and therefore are not essential components of our diet. From cholesterol, our body can make what? Vitamin D and sex hormones and bile acids. And sterols it is the base of cholesterol. Classification of lipids: triacylglycerol, phospholipids, sphingolipids, waxes, steroids, lipoproteins, and ecosanites. Now, it's difficult to cover all of it, these 2 sessions, but I'll give you a hint to read it. This is a classification, okay? Now, first, let's see triacylglycerol. Here, where triacylglycerol is found. Where triacylglycerol is found in our body. Where triacylglycerol is found? Yeah, exactly. Which is found in adipose tissue. And triacylglycerol this is storage form of lipids in our body. The normal range of triacylglycerol in our body is it should be less than 150 milligram per deciliters. Now, triacylglycerol is it is the chemical name of what? Fats and oils. When we say triacylglycerol, it can be fats or it can be oils. Fats are rich in saturated fatty acids, whereas oils are rich in what? Unsaturated fatty acids. Source of triacylglycerol to our body, exogenous source from the food what we eat. It can be fat or oil type. Endogenous source through liver lipogenesis. In well-fed conditions, lipids can be synthesized by using acetyl-CoA, which is the starting material for lipid synthesis. What are the differences between fats and oils? One is their physical appearance. Oils are liquid at room temperature, whereas fats are solid at room temperature. Oils has low melting point. The presence of double bond reduce what? Its melting point. Hence, double bond, the presence of one double bond makes the compound bends by 30 degrees. Oils are less stable. Why? Since it is rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids, it will undergo what? It will undergo lipid peroxidation. And if you take suitable oils, you will reduce your chance to develop heart disease. And when we intake foods which is rich in lipids, the most common form of lipid is triacylglycerol, and that is why it is a predominant lipid when we eat foods which are rich in lipids. How triacylglycerol is transported in our body? Through the help of lipoproteins. As I mentioned earlier, we do have 5 types of lipoproteins. These are chylomicrons, VLDL to refer very low density lipoproteins, and ILDL, intermediate density lipoproteins, low density lipoproteins, and high density lipoproteins. Chylomicrons transport exogenous triacylglycerol, whereas VLDL transports those triacylglycerols which is synthesized in our body, mainly within the liver. These are the distribution of triacylglycerol in our body, and here it's listed some of the role of triacylglycerols. What are the biomedical importance of triacylglycerol? It can act as a source of energy, okay, if someone is starved. Why our body prefers to store energy in the form of triacylglycerol? Because it stores energy free from what? Water. That means it is highly reduced and it's in a hydrous form. That's why our body prefers to store energy in the form of triacylglycerols. Okay. And it requires less space when we compare it with that of glycogen. When we compare glycogen stores energy, but it requires a lot of space to store it, since it is rich in what? Water molecules. Whereas in the case of triacylglycerol, it is stored in small in drop-like forms, because it requires what? Less space, since it is anhydrous form. It also regulates body temperature, and these are some of the functions of lipids in general. And triacylglycerol also good for our health. It provides shape to our body, and it makes our skin smooth. How we will get monoacylglycerol and diacylglycerol? All of them, they are derived lipids. When triacylglycerol are hydrolyzed by an enzyme, the product may be one fatty acid and diacylglycerol. If triacylglycerol is hydrolyzed, it will form 2 fatty acids plus Monoacyl glycerol. Now, monoacyl glycerol and diacyl glycerol, they are derived lipids from hydrolysis of what? Simple lipids. The simplest lipid here is triacyl glycerol. Now, to be healthy, ingest natural mixed form and avoid to take trans fatty acids. And you should to maintain your triacyl glycerol levels. These are the levels of triacyl glycerol. The normal level should be less than 150 milligram per deciliter. If it is very high, it will affect your health. Then, if you do have excess amount of transacyl AG, that means too many fats, okay, and oils, your risk to develop different metabolic disorders will be very high. And individuals which have high amount of fats in their bodies will have at risk to develop DM, stroke, cancer, and so on. The position, okay, here one main point here is that the position of triacyl glycerol affects or enhances the risk of developing specific disease. Okay. That means ሆድ አካባቢ ሆድ ዝቅ ብሎ ያለ ፋት ለጤና በጣም መጥፎ ነው። ራዘር ወደ ታች የወረደው ዳሌ አካባቢ ቢሆን የተሻለ ነው ማለት ነው። These are some of the medical complications of obesity, okay? And obesity is not as such an individual problem, okay? It is as such a social problem. Then how we will avoid obesity? One is avoiding sudden stress. Eat more fruits. It's better to sit few time to see TVs, do physical activity, stop eating fast foods, and get enough sleep. This may help you to maintain your body weight. Do you have questions? ያያላችሁ Do you have questions? Females has less lens tissue than males. Lens tissue is a type of tissue which is free from fats. No. We will not say all lipids are esters. We do have many forms of lipids which forms ether linkage. Okay, and so we say ester here to mean triacyl glycerol. Okay, triacyl glycerol is formed by esterification of fatty acids with that of glycerol. If phosphate group is added, it belongs to compound or complex. Triacyl glycerol and triglycerides, they are synonymous in nomenclature. We can use one interchangeably. Triglyceride and triacyl glycerol. We can use interchangeably. Tissue which is free from fats. ቀሪው እንግዲህ አንቡ። Okay, if you have any complex, you can ask me. I will give you the slides. I will attach to him today on the afternoon. I will give what I have. If you want different book of biochemistry books for your profession, also I will give you. እሺ ልካለሁ፣ ስላይድ ልክላችኋለሁ። መጽሐፍም ስትመጡ ከመጣችሁ ጥቁር አንበሳ እልክላችኋለሁ፣ በሰጣችኋለሁ በፍላሽ ምናምን። Yeah, I will send the reference books as well. Thank you very much. The best book for this module is Lipid Coat. Okay, the best book for this module is Lipid Coat. That means illustrated biochemistry. Illustrated review of biochemistry is it is a textbook for module 1.